Welcome to Healed by Hidayah, your space for real struggles, raw emotions, and the light of Islamic guidance.
Today, we're jumping into something really fascinating. Islamic insights on mental well-being and healing. We've looked through quite a range of sources, from classical scholars right up to modern Muslim psychologists. And what comes through is this really rich, integrated view that feels surprisingly relevant, actually, for the challenges we all face now. Our goal for you today, really, is to pull out the most important ideas from these teachings, give you a clear, kind of concise understanding of how Islam actually views and talks about mental health. We want to get past some common misunderstandings.
Absolutely. And I think the really profound starting point is how Islam, like centuries ago, really understood the human being holistically. It wasn't just body or just mind. It was this complex mix, including the soul. And that's not just old philosophy. It's like a blueprint for treating the whole person, something modern approaches are only now fully embracing.
That's a really powerful way to frame it. So yeah, get ready to explore how this ancient wisdom offers pretty deep guidance for today's mental health landscape. We hope you'll find it helps you become truly well-informed on what can be a vital, but often, let's face it, misunderstood topic. Okay, so we've got this core idea. The holistic human body, mind, soul. How exactly does that basic principle shape Islam's sort of practical approach to mental well-being?
What's fundamental, the Qur'an and the Sunnah Prophet Muhammad's traditions, they consistently talk about inner peace, emotional health, resilience. It's not surface level. You see it directly in verses like Surah Arad, verse 28, "Verily in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest." That immediately brings into the spiritual dimension as key to feeling okay.
Okay. So remembrance, connection.
Exactly. Now, what's really striking is that even the Prophet himself, peace be upon him, often prayed specifically for refuge from anxiety and sorrow. This shows it's not about being weak in faith if you feel distress. It's just human. The Quran even says, in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 286, Allah does not burden a soul beyond that it can bear. It acknowledges limits. And think about Prophet Jacob openly talking about his grief in the Quran, saying, "I only complain of my suffering and my grief to Allah."
So it actually validates the whole range of human emotions, even for prophets. That feels really important, especially when, some cultures might push back against showing vulnerability.
Precisely. Look at the Prophet's year of grief. After losing his wife Khadijah and his uncle Abu Talib, he wept, he sought time alone. That example shows that expressing emotion, crying, needing space, it's not seen as weak faith. It's just part of being human, acknowledged within Islam.
Right. So this holistic view straight away allows for a more balanced approach. It's not about just gritting your teeth and pretending. But okay, this leads to something really interesting that often comes up. When we talk about mental health issues, are they purely medical, or is it all spiritual, maybe Shaytan's influence, or like a mix?
Yeah, that's a critical discussion. And the Islamic perspective is actually quite nuanced here. It recognizes that mental illness, like physical illness, can have multiple causes. So just as a physical problem might have biological roots, mental health conditions are understood to involve biology, psychology, social factors.
Right.
It's complex. Islam actually encourages observing the natural world, reflecting on creation. That aligns perfectly with studying the physiological side of things, the neurology behind depression or anxiety.
Okay, so science isn't seen as separate.
Not at all. Now, about Shaytan or Satan. Islamic texts explain his role is mainly about sowing discord, whispering doubts, that's called waswas, tempting people towards, sin and despair. These whispers can definitely worsen existing problems or feed negative thoughts, but they don't cancel out the biological or psychological reality of an illness. It's not the sole cause.
So it's not an either. It could be like adding fuel to an existing fire, maybe.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. And classical scholars really wrestled with this complexity. You have someone like Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya in his works like Zad al-Ma'ad, The Prophetic Medicine. He discussed ailments of the heart. And this covered both spiritual and psychological issues. He talked about physical imbalances, worldly attachments, and stress using both spiritual practices and practical solutions.
Interesting. Practical solutions, too.
Yeah. And then there's Imam al-Ghazali in his huge work, Ihya Ulum al-Din. He went deep into diseases of the soul. He laid out this framework for inner purification, but also showed how things like excessive anger or greed could show up as psychological distress. He talked about purification, sure, but he never denied that emotional problems could have really complex roots.
Wow. So the idea that a disease of the soul isn't just spiritual, but can be tied to emotions, even physical things, that feels very modern, actually, for scholars writing centuries ago.
It really does. They laid some serious groundwork for understanding this interplay between spirit, mind, emotions, even the body. It allowed for a much more comprehensive way of thinking about healing.
Okay, that naturally leads us to the next big question. What does all this mean for seeking professional help now? Is going to therapy somehow against faith?
No, not at all. The Islamic stance is actually very positive and encouraging towards seeking therapy. Think of it this way. You go to a doctor for a physical problem, right? Well, seeking help from a psychologist or therapist for mental health is seen in the same light. It's commendable, even. The Prophet himself, peace be upon him, said, "For every disease there is a cure." He encouraged finding treatment. That principle logically extends to mental health, too. There's another saying, "Make use of medical treatment, for Allah has not made a disease without appointing a remedy for it."
Right, so the remedy could be therapy.
Exactly. Now, sometimes people worry. This misconception pops up that seeking therapy means your faith isn't strong enough or you don't have enough trust in Allah, tawakkul. But tawakkul is always meant to be balanced with asbab, taking the practical means available. You know the saying, trust in Allah, but tie your camel.
Ah, okay, so you do your part, you take the action. Therapy is tying the camel.
Precisely. It's using the means Allah has provided. And you see this lived out today by many modern Muslim psychologists, people like Dr. Rania Awad, who does amazing work on culturally sensitive therapy, or Dr. Houman Keshavarzi, who integrates Islamic principles into CBT. They demonstrate that therapy isn't just allowed, it's a valuable tool, a means Allah provides for healing. And actually, some therapies, like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which focuses on changing negative thought patterns, that really resonates with Islamic ideas like Husn al-Than, having good expectations of Allah.
That's such a key takeaway for you listening. Seeking professional help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's totally in line with Islamic teachings. Okay, so professional help is encouraged, but what about faith itself? What's its indispensable role in, healing and building resilience?
Oh, faith is a massive resource, a huge source of strength. Practices like the daily prayers, Salat, remembrance of Allah, Dhikr, reading the Qur'an, making personal supplication, dua. These create a really profound connection. They offer comfort, they build hope, they give you a framework for making sense of life's difficulties. They can really reduce feelings of helplessness.
So it anchors you somehow.
Definitely. And look at the stories in the Qur'an, the lives of the prophets. They're like masterclasses in resilience. Think of Prophet Ayub, Job, enduring incredible hardship, but holding on to his faith and turning to Allah. That's in the Qur'an. Or Prophet Moses feeling fear when facing Pharaoh and Allah reassuring him. That's acknowledged. Prophet Muhammad himself sought quiet time for reflection, leaned on loved ones for support, and always turned to prayer when distressed. Even his companions, like Abu Bakr and Umar, faced immense challenges and grief. Their strength came from devotion, yes, but also balancing faith with practical coping.
So these aren't just stories from the past, they're more like guides for navigating difficulty.
Exactly. They show us that struggling emotionally doesn't mean your faith is lacking. Actually, faith can be the very ground you stand on to build resilience. So for Muslims facing mental health challenges today, there's some really practical advice rooted in this. First, know your struggle is valid. Islam recognizes it. It's not a punishment, definitely not a sign of weak faith. Second, seek help, both spiritual through prayer, Qur'an, Dhikr, dua, and psychological from qualified professionals, maybe community support too. Third, hold on to hope. Remember that promise in the Qur'an, chapter 94. Indeed, with hardship will be ease. It's repeated for emphasis.
That's powerful. Ease comes with the hardship.
Yes. Fourth, build supportive community. Isolation makes things worse. The Prophet said believers are like one body, feeling for each other. And finally, fifth, balance faith with practical steps. Mindfulness, exercise, taking medication if it's prescribed. It's all part of that tying your camel idea.
Okay, so let's recap this deep dive. The core message seems to be that Islam offers this incredibly balanced, holistic view of mental health. It validates suffering, pushes back against stigma, and genuinely encourages using both spiritual resources and professional care. It's really not about choosing religion or psychology, but finding the harmony between them.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for you to consider is this. How does knowing about this integrated approach, this place where ancient wisdom genuinely meets modern understanding, how does that empower you? How might it change how you see well-being? Not just as something tough to get through, but maybe as a journey of growth, resilience, and ultimately a deeper connection.
You've been listening to Healed by Hidayah. If this touched your heart, don't stop here. Explore more podcast episodes and real Islamic stories waiting just for you. Until next time, may Allah keep your heart guided and your path lit with Hidayah.